Good evening, YouTube. Welcome to the Reptile Barn. As promised in a previous video, I wanted to share with you guys a couple of things that Vic Herrick, who is a breeder of Eastern Indigos, shared with me in a recent email. He's an expert. He has bred dozens, maybe hundreds of clutches of Eastern Indigos. He knows a lot. He reads a lot of the scientific literature, and he just has a ton of experience. So I want to share with you a couple of things he told me. I mentioned in that video previously that he reminded me to always keep fresh, clean water in with your Eastern Indigos. I think any of the dry marcon. I think any reptile, pretty much, period. Your animals should have access to water. But he said because these guys will often drink every single day and like large amounts of water, you just don't want to stress them by not putting water in there. Their system is not as water efficient, it seems, as many snakes are. For example, a lot of liquid water comes out when they pass urates, where some reptiles don't. It's just kind of the chalky urate, right? But these guys pass a lot of liquid. So one, that means they need to be cleaned a little bit more thoroughly, I guess. You can't just spot clean. You really need to wipe things up, disinfect every once in a while, whatever it takes to keep it clean. And it means that they're just drinking and passing a lot of water. So he stressed heavily, do not let them go without water. And it needs to be clean. I did bring that up in the previous video, but he also shared a few other things. That even though they are a very active, physical colubrid, they also are perfectly happy to spend time in their hide, maybe with their head out, watching things, And I have noticed that. I think sometimes I've stressed so much that they like to move, they like to explore, that you might get the impression that if yours isn't moving, for a few days, something's wrong. And that is not the case. Vic was like, he has plenty of them that when their belly's full and the temperatures are good and they're content, they'll sit with most of their body in the hide and their front, 6 to 8 inches out just looking at stuff. If something interests them, they'll come out, they'll look, or they'll periscope. But it's okay if they stay still for a while. They are a snake, right? They are not, a wolf or something that actually has to just run around constantly defending territory, finding new food, whatever. If they're content, they will spend time holding still, which means that you need to get them an enclosure that has some comfortable areas. They're not arboreal, although they'll be happy to climb things when they're exploring. When they're still, they would like to be comfortable, like laid out on something that they don't have to be clinging onto branches or whatever, right? He was talking about how one way to get them good exercise in their enclosure, so not necessarily, like right now, he's out, he's exploring, right? Being handled, but when he's in his enclosure, he said, change things. And I've heard this with lots of reptile keepers. Change things up. Sometimes have new branches, so there's new smells introduced. Put the food in different places. Don't just always hand it right to them with tongs. Maybe even put it down like a tube or something that they have to really figure out how to get it out of. So it is helpful for the snake, especially if they can get bored in captivity, to change up the enclosure, add new things, give them choice. That's one thing that he specifically wrote in the email. Give them choices. Drier areas, wetter areas. Darker areas, brighter areas. Hotter, colder, rough, smooth, textures. These animals, they feel things. They rub on things. They're curious. They want to know what their environment looks like. So he just said, keep things fresh, change things up, give them variety, give them choices. And I think his phrase was something like, if you let them choose from a variety of options, then they will thrive. If you are forcing them to live in a very specific way, and there's only one option of temperature, one option of light, one option of humidity, then the snake ends up enduring, not just not thriving how you would want to, right? One thing I wanted to bring up that I'm not sure if I put in the previous video or not, these are loud snakes, okay? If she comes a little closer with the camera, you might hear they are very loud snakes. It is not just hissing. Let's see if we can hear something. Now he goes quiet, of course. Anyway, these snakes make an almost tiger-like chuff. I maybe call it huffing. When they exhale, sometimes they I guess it's similar to the physical act of hissing that other snakes have, but it sounds different with them. There he goes. And they do it a lot. They're just loud. They like to make noise. I've been told that it's no indication of upsetness or illness or anything like that. Of course, you know, if they're drooling or if it's wet sounding or anything like that, of course, you want to watch for respiratory infections just like any reptile. But I used to really worry when I play with the Indigos because they're always making this noise, and I'm like, is he mad? Is he hissing at me? Or is he scared? Is he sick? But many people who keep dry mark on have said, no, they're just loud. They just like to make noises. So that's something to keep in mind. Another that I would bring up is that while Eastern Indigos specifically are known as just not biters, they really are not biters. If you do get bit, it's going to hurt. They have very powerful jaws, so be aware of that. And they're very food aggressive, very food aggressive. I wouldn't just open his tank and immediately reach in there. Okay, I might get bit, and that would hurt. I always take the rubberized end of a snake hook and I show it to him. He doesn't usually strike at it or anything, but he comes charging up to it, you know, huffing, and realizes it's not food, and then I can pick him up and it's fine. But you would not want to get bit by one of these. They have a little bit bigger teeth than some snakes their size, and their jaw strength is just more. And I think that's because they're not a constrictor and they're not venomous. So their mechanism to overpower their prey is not squeezing it, and it's not envenomating it. They have to just kill with their mouth, right? I've seen him bash food on the ground, and this is, you know, frozen thawed food. It's not even alive. And he'll pick it up and smash it. He'll pin it against like the wall and crush it. He'll just bite it repeatedly, like hard bites. It's very aggressive looking. And while it's cool to watch, again, I use frozen thawed. I wouldn't want a live rodent to die that way. That would be, I find, unnecessary. But because of that, they have very strong jaws. So just be aware, even though it's not a very large snake, they pack a punch for such a little guy, right? I mean, they're long, but he doesn't look like a big snake, right? But they bite like one. And I think that's it. As many of you probably know, these are federally protected because they are a threatened species. So you have to have a permit in order to transfer them between states. You can't ship them or drive them or anything between states without this permit. I don't find it particularly difficult to get, although some people really have. I'm not sure. I've never had trouble with it. And it's not very expensive. You just have to do it ahead of time so that when you're ready to buy your baby, if it's coming from a breeder out of state, you have your permit. And most of the big breeders of Eastern Indigos will point you in the right direction to help you figure out what answers to give on the forms and everything. And yeah, so just be aware. You can't just go to what's that big breeder, Black Pearl Reptiles, I think, who breeds a bunch of dry mark on, and say, hey, I want a baby right now. It's not going to happen. You have to have your permit beforehand, and it can take a couple months to receive it. So just be aware of that, any of you who are looking to buy anything like this. The others in the genus Drymarchon, I do not believe are protected. So you could get, a Crebo, yellowtail Crebo or a unicolor or whatever, and I don't believe you'd need a permit for that. But For these guys, you do. Anyway, I hope that was interesting and informational, and a big thank you to Vic for sharing the information with me. I always think it's important to improve husbandry if you learn new things. You know, if you realize like, oh, this animal would prefer this, or whatever the case may be, make the changes, you know? I think that's a part of being a good, responsible animal keeper. I do not think we have to be perfect in order to keep animals, but we should be willing to change if it becomes apparent that there's something that they need that is different from what we're currently doing. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, we're the Reptile Barn.